Hi, as Kathy said, I'm Barry Kienzle, and I want to thank Kathy Teets and Headline Books for promoting Zoom into books. It's really good to be able to stay in front of our readers, even if it is by video. Heart of a Lion, Our Journey of Faith and Courage. The hour is Willie and Brenda Burton's journey. Willie wrestled for 4 years in high school at Fairdale High School near Louisville with cerebral palsy. Unbeknownst to him, for 4 years when he wrestled, ESPN was following him because of his unique situation. I'm going to play a video called Willpower that they produced. And as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I wonder how many words a video is worth. Well, you can be the judge.
Best stories in sports. This is an East.
Jeremy knows is a unique figure, not only in wrestling, but in sports.
If they did a Mount Rushmore of college wrestling, Dan Gable would be on it and 3 empty spots.
He was an NCAA champion at Iowa State as a wrestler. He was an Olympic champion at the Munich Games in '72. He was, in some ways, the Babe Ruth of wrestling. And then he became the coach at Iowa and the Connie Mack of wrestling coaches. One loss in his entire career. Which brings us to the story Dan Gable will tell for us. The story of a young man for whom, like Gable, wrestling means everything to him.
Once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. Simple to define.
Gable into his chicken wing. There's the ball. It's all over. Dan Gable.
Your hand gets raised,
Dan Gable.
or it doesn't. As I wrestled my way through high school and college, my hand was raised 181 straight times. Until my last college match.
There's the champion, Dan Gable.
When it wasn't.
He's got him down. And Dan Gable is bewildered. Gable has lost.
181 and 1. That was my record. But a record isn't what defines a wrestler.
Dan Gable talks about the 3 periods in wrestling. The first period is won by the guy with the most technique. The second period is won by the guy with the most conditioning.
Yeah, go ahead and put him on the mat.
The third period is won by the wrestler with the most heart. I challenge you to find a wrestler with more heart than Willie Burton.
You can tell when somebody's a wrestler. They walk differently, they talk differently. They're like a little different on the inside.
Over the past 4 years, Willie has wrestled more than 100 matches. And more than 100 times, he lost. Kentucky is ill. It's where the odds have always been stacked against Willie from before he was even born.
His birth mom called our church one day and she said, "I'm 17, I'm pregnant, I want to know if someone in your church will adopt my baby."
We were going back and forth weighing the pros and cons and everything, and then we finally decided that we would take him.
On September 23rd, 1995, Willie was born. He was 2 months premature.
I have a cerebral palsy. It's because I had a bleed in my brain, the part of my brain that it tells me how to walk, and it also like affects my speech too.
Willie's legs would never freely support his body weight, and he had limited strength and grip in his right arm.
Pediatric Therapy Family Care Center.
I had a physical therapy pretty much every day of the week. A couple of days out of the week, I had to have physical therapy, and I had speech therapy.
Right there.
Willie's mental capacity was unaffected, and he always tried to do more than his body would allow.
Sports, and that was boring.
I got one first place and one second place.
But they're not competitive enough. Like, you tried your best, and here's a trophy. I want to do something greater than that.
In 2010, Willie started high school. That's where he found the competition he had always been seeking.
When I got to high school, I just wanted to wrestle just because I want to do a sport where it's me against the other guy, and whoever wins, wins. Okay. I got you.
And he said, yeah.
It's hot outside.
I told him, I said, I'll support you in any way I can.
Yes.
Take off.
I was scared for him because I was figuring this ain't gonna happen.
After passing a physical, Willie joined the team.
When I saw Willie, and I saw the struggle and, could barely crawl from one end of the mat to the other. And I just told him, I said, man, I don't know how that's going to work out.
I presented Willie with the same challenges I would have with any wrestlers. Whatever happened inside that circle was completely left to him. He wasn't treated with any kind of special treatment. Wrestlers weren't asked to throw in the towel for him.
And nobody did. Wrestling at 106 pounds of his right arm and had no use of his legs on the mat. He wrestled more than 20 times as a freshman. He lost every match.
I was all the time waiting, and I'm sad to say it, I was actually hoping that one day he'd come home and go, Dad, wrestling's not for me.
Instead, when off-season conditioning began, Willie pushed even harder.
And here was a kid willing around the track for 2 miles.
I want to say, okay, just because I didn't win, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I want to be known as a wrestler.
By his sophomore season, he was.
He began to gain confidence, and I think it gave everybody else the opportunity to be able to see Willie's personality.
See, I got you. Carrying Willie and everything, it was a hassle. But it was kind of our hassle, we enjoyed doing all that. He'd get weighed in, and then
I belonged to the team. I was one of the members. I was one of the brothers.
Get it, Willie, get it! Ah! Come on, Willie!
But once Willie was on the mat, his teammates could only watch.
there was always that hope that he would pin somebody or win by points, and it never came.
Heartbreaking to watch him crawl out there, and be hoping, you thinking maybe this will be the time, and he would lose.
Sophomore year, junior year, every match he lost.
There was times I wanted to give up. I mean, if I'm not going to win, what's the point of doing this?
Senior year was no different. The season was coming to an end. Willie remained winless.
I have to figure out what I want my legacy to be here. Do I want it to be a kid that hasn't won? Or do I want to push harder than I ever have before?
February 11th, 2014.
I thought it was going to be like any other night. You know, Willie's going to go out and he's going to be ready to wrestle. But, you know, he's going to not be able to win.
Short time, drive to it, Get the two. Drive.
Gets toward the middle. You know, really close match.
Drive, Willie, drive.
And I mean, it just got electric.
The referee's eyebrows are going up and people are standing.
You just want to will him through it, you know.
The final period. The match is tied. Willie secures a cradle.
He can win this. He can win this.
Willie turns his opponent's shoulders on the mat and takes the lead. For the first time in over 100 matches, Willie
It meant that all my hard work it didn't go to waste, and it wasn't just for no reason.
Go win it, Willie. Don't give him nothing, Willie.
4 days later, regionals.
It kind of hit me like, if I don't win this, this is my last match I'm ever going to have.
Let's go, Willie. This ain't your last match. You got this.
Let's go, Willie. Use your hands, the base. Turn through. Turn through. Go.
After 40 seconds, it was over.
I wish I had his heart. His never say die attitude has caused me to look at myself and say, don't you dare quit.
I only had one loss. Willie only had one win. But our records, we are both wrestlers.
You can tell when somebody's a wrestler. They walk differently, they talk differently. Wrestling, that made me who I am right now.
I never get tired of watching that video. It's so inspirational. I collaborated with Willie and Brenda to write their story. A lot of people would ask me how I got involved with them. They live about 100 miles away from me. They live in Louisville, and I live in northern Kentucky near Cincinnati. But there was a man in Cincinnati named Jeff, and he had watched the ESPN Willpower video. He thought, I think I can help this family. So he went to Louisville and spoke with Willie's coaches and the Burtons, and they told him that they wanted to get Willie's story told. So he came back to Cincinnati and spoke to a mutual friend of mine and asked him, how do you get a book published? So he said, well, why don't you go talk to Barry? He's done it a couple times. And I had 2 historical fiction novels that I had written and had published through Headline Books. So he calls me and says, could we meet for lunch? And I said, sure. And he says, I'm going to send you an email, and it's going to have an attachment to it, and it's going to be a video about Willie Burton. So I said, okay, fine. So he sends me the email. I looked at it, and to be honest with you, I got choked up. And I sometimes do every time I watch it. So we met for lunch and talked about it. And I said to him, I said, his name was Jeff. I said, Jeff, I want to write that story. I said, I want to write it and I'll help get it published. And he thought, oh, this is really great, because I, so to speak, was a one-stop shop. So he and I went down to Louisville to meet with Willie and Brenda, and we went down there and met them for lunch, and their coach, his wrestling coach, Joe Jarvis, was there. So the 3 of us talked about it, and to be quite honest, I guess I was selling myself. And then at the end of the conversation, as lunch was winding up, Brenda said, I got one question for you. She says, are you a Christian? I said, yes, I am. And she said, well, we want to work with you. And that gave me the first insight I had as to how much of a role faith plays in their lives. One has to admit, Willie's story is really like no other. He was born premature, weighed 2.5 pounds at birth, went through 14 years of nearly daily physical therapy. And his therapist, Jamie Ramsey, who was with him for the entire 14 years, is there on the left. And here he is in the heart walker that you saw on the video. But he also had painful surgeries he had to endure. He had a surgery on the nerves in his back that would help frozen right hand that was frozen into a ball release. And it did partially, and he still has those symptoms. But then, and on top of that, he had 2 surgeries on his hips. He had pins inserted 2 times in both hips to help with his hip dysplasia. I like this slide. This is Jamie Ramsey on the left, his physical therapist, and Larry, his dad, on the right. And Willie's on a horse, and somebody goes, what in the world is somebody doing? This is therapy, and he's on a horse? Yeah, it is therapy. It's called horse therapy because the natural stride and gait of a horse is good for people that suffer from cerebral palsy to get their balance. So I guess it was one of the more fun therapies he had, and Willie was always excited because the horse he was riding on was named Willie. Willie always wanted to be a superhero, and since he couldn't walk and he spent most of his days in a wheelchair, either his dad or somebody else strong enough would pick him up and fly him around the room like Superman with his cape on. As I mentioned, and even though it only gave him a few moments out of it, he really loved flying around the room. I always enjoyed this slide. This is Willie as a really a young boy, and with him is Mike Duke, who was the pastor of their church, who was very instrumental in Willie being adopted. I quite frankly think that if the Burtons hadn't adopted Willie, probably the Dukes would have. Through their story, Brenda was the rock. She had a deep faith, and it helped serve them in trying to overcome some of the ordeals in his life. She could quote chapter and verse from the Bible, and when I first got involved with them, it was a little bit intimidating because I couldn't do that, and she could and would do it with regularity. So, but it really gave me an insight into what drives their lives. So after I was thinking about it for a while, I thought, well, probably a good idea. Why don't we include Bible quotes at the beginning of each chapter? So we did, and I asked them to pick them out, and they did. They were very excited about the idea. And because, you know, a Bible quote can sort of leave a story in addition to their story. So it really sets the tone for each chapter, and it really made the book better. The other thing about Willie has a big sense of humor. And I really think he uses it to help deflect from his condition. His humor is often self-deprecating, and I included a lot of the stories that included his humor in the book. Okay, he does like a good laugh, but usually he likes to be the originator. I originally wrote the book called Heart of a Lion, My Journey of Faith and Courage. But after the first draft, both me and the Burtons and my editor thought that Brenda's story was as much a part of it as Willie's. So we decided to write it from both of their perspectives. So I went and re-interviewed Brenda without Willie to get her perspective on each chapter. So what I did was then took it and blended the two together, and when you read each chapter, the first part will be Willie's perspective and the second one is Brenda's, and it really made the book a lot better. Then Willie starts high school and decides he wants to be on the wrestling team. Now, who could have dreamt that? So his mother supported him, as mothers do, but he had a tremendous disability, and he had no use of his legs and little use of his arm. But to me, this was really the second half of the beginning of Willie's story. His teammates all along, and as you saw in the video, supported him endlessly, without question. They were committed to him. But they often told me, they couldn't see how he kept going. You can see Willie in the center of this picture. They said there were times where we didn't know what to say to him. You can only say so many times, "Oh, Willie, you can do this," and "Go get him, Willie, you can do it." And they said, but he just kept on going, and the losing continued on, match after match, and the pressure continued to build. But somehow he got through it through his courage. Till finally, on senior night, he won. What a relief, what a joy. For him, his teammates, a community. The Louisville Courier-Journal wrote articles about him. Even the city of Louisville gave him a medal. So he got an award from him. So it was hard to put into words for me that joy that everyone experienced. I really wasn't expecting to have to write words for that, but you don't want something like that to fade into time. Another big thing about Willie was his inspiration to others through all his adversity. His teammates and everyone. He said from the beginning that all he ever wanted to do was to help others. He said, if I can help just one other person through their adversity and who needs encouragement and needs to see they can overcome their challenges, no matter what it is, then all my challenges have been worth it. And then with the ESPN video, he got national attention, spoke to groups, had articles in the newspapers and magazines. And there was one young boy that called him from Hawaii who was having hip surgery. And Willie said to him, you know, I did this, you can do it too, and really encouraged him. In 2016, he won an award called A Hero Among Us from the National Consortium for Academic and Sports, and it was given out in Orlando. It was a big event for him to go to. And since the book, both he and I have been interviewed on TV. We've had some online articles written. He's had an article in a magazine. So we've also won, or the book has won, I should say, a Mom's Choice Award, which was really a big thing to be awarded because they honor excellence in family-friendly media. So on the lower left-hand corner, you can see a picture of Willie, Brenda, and myself down at Headline Books booth at the Charlotte Christmas show last November. And it was exciting and fun for Willie and Brenda to be there. They really got to see what book promotion is about. And while we were in the booth, some people that came by actually recognized Willie from the ESPN video and were excited to see him, have their picture taken with him, and get his autograph. So that was fun for all of us that got to experience it. The next picture over is Willie with Dan Gable. Dan Gable was the narrator of the ESPN video and actually wrote the foreword for our book. Willie is holding his Olympic gold medal, which was really a big treat for him. Right now, Willie is attending Campbellsville University, taking most courses, which right now with the virus, everybody's taking online courses. And he's also the assistant wrestling coach at his alma mater, Fairdale High School. You can get autographed copies of the books, and they'll come through me, and I have autographed copies that include Willie and Brenda and myself, and you can get them at headlinebooks.com, who is right now shipping them for free, or barrykbooks.com. I want to thank you for taking time to view my presentation of Part of the Line and our journey of faith and courage. I hope you enjoyed it.